This meeting is being recorded.
Hello and welcome to another People's Health Alliance Roundtable. I'm Catherine McBean and I'm joined today by some incredible ladies as we talk about natural birth. We have Nickita Starck here. She's one of our incredible ambassadors, founder of When Push Comes to Shove and co-founder of Artemis Birth Attendant Academy. She is a mother, an activist, traditional birth attendant, teacher, author and singer-songwriter, and an all-round good egg. We're also joined by Chamberlain, co-founder of the Artemis Birth Attendant Academy. She's also a teacher, birth keeper, award-winning midwife and mother. Alison's here, Alison Shaloe. Alison Shaloe is a midwife, lactation consultant, spirit baby intuitive, reiki healer and author. She supports and helps to empower women emotionally and spiritually on their fertility, pregnancy and early mothering journeys. We also have Louise Clay with us, founder of Loucina, I think I'm pronouncing that right, birthkeeping, natural birth practitioner, former midwife, mother, and antenatal educator. Hello to Caroline. Caroline Spear is with us, birthkeeper and doula since 1993, combining traditional nutrition and homeopathy for healthier and safer pregnancy, birth and beyond. And Caroline is the mother of four. Well done, Caroline. And Jeanette Faulkner, birthkeeping doula, former registered midwife and nurse, diploma in hypnotherapy and student homeopathy, firm believer in creating the right energy space for birth and supporting the body to allow self-healing. Absolutely fantastic, ladies, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is a topic that's close to my heart as a mum who's done hospital and home births and has seen the absolute benefits that can be taken from having a home birth, a well-supported home birth. And it was an absolute dream journey for me, and I want others to understand the benefits and the safety that can be had, along with the beauty of having the birth that you want. So what I'd like to do is just pose the question to you first. A lot of people I hear, when I first said I was having a water birth at home, mind you, this was a number of years ago, but I got a lot of people come back to me, particularly women, saying, really, are you sure you want to do that? What if there's a problem? What if there's an issue? How will you cope? So what I'd like to do is throw it open to you guys at the moment to have a discussion and let us know initially that not necessarily everything that happens within the NHS supports a mum in having a natural birth. And I want to get your thoughts on that. If I could throw it open, let's start with you, Nickita. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's really important first and foremost to address the fact that, you know, no woman should be coerced either way into any specific birth. Yeah, you've got the mainstream very much edging towards a managed birth in hospital with all the drugs and sprinkles on top. And yeah, we clearly do support natural birth, but that doesn't mean to say that's what we want for everyone. The idea, certainly at When Push Comes to Shove, is to present women with choice. And people do not have choice at the moment. You're only as informed as the information that's in front of you. So if women actually understand, one, their capabilities and to remember who they are in a very spiritual way and connect with their intuition, they're far more likely to start asking more questions of which we are able to answer if they want to go down that path. But we absolutely do not agree with coercion, birth like this, birth like that, birth here, birth there. No, it's about choice. And we're here to help women make informed decisions and support them.
Fantastic. Any of you other ladies, do jump in. This is a free for all. So Angela, what are your thoughts?
I do think I've obviously got quite a few years experience previously working within the NHS, and one of the main reasons why I left was because I wasn't able to provide the care that I'm capable of giving and that I feel that women deserve. And the structure of maternity services currently is very over medicalised. There is a lot of over interference with the natural physiological process of birth. A lot of the practice comes from a place of fear of litigation rather than what is better for that individual woman and her family. There's no holistic approach. The services are overstretched. It doesn't mean that there's not good-natured and kind, willing people within the NHS. There's hundreds of them, but the system isn't working for the women that are entering it at the moment. And that's why organisations like When Push Comes to Shove are so important, because it, like Nickita said, it's creating more choice and options for women. And there's been numerous studies over the years that show that continuity of care within your pregnancy, antenatal period, provides the best outcomes for mothers and babies. Nobody is in the business of telling anybody where to give birth, how to give birth, but just having that continuity of somebody that's advocating on your behalf, is listening to what your wants and needs are, has the time to listen to you, is so important. And that is seriously lacking within the NHS services today. So I think more and more women, even if they decide to have an elective cesarean section, they will all benefit from that continuity of care throughout their pregnancy journey. And that's what organisations like When Push Comes to Shove can offer, is that person like to be there continuously to support you in whatever your choices might be, and to present you with information to help you make those choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I watch quite a lot of birthing videos because it's something I think Nickita knows that as soon as this is all said and done, I'm retraining, and she knows where I'm heading. It's something I'm quite passionate about. But what I've noticed in a number of these videos is the fact that, and this is the US, I don't know what the situation is in the UK, but it's very much a case of, oh yeah, I'm 5 days over, so I'm going in to get started. They're going to put me on a drip and get things moving. And sometimes it's less than 3 days. 5 days, it can be 3 days. And I'm thinking, crikey O'Reilly, you know, I was allowed to go over quite substantially. I think 15 days was my longest. And then I actually did, not knowing enough, I did choose to be induced. In hindsight, I would make a different decision now, but I didn't have the knowledge then. I was being led by what the midwife team were telling me. But do we have that starting to ramp up here in the UK? Are more and more women being pushed harder by the NHS to go and be induced far earlier than might be necessary? Jeanette, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just listening to what a lot of women are saying, as soon as they hit 40 weeks, they're literally being booked in for an induction. So they set up that whole anxiety issue literally from their due date, which is just nonsense. And as all of us know here, the majority of us, our women do not go into labour until they're pretty much 10 days over. That's quite normal. And a lot of them are 42, nearly 43 weeks. So yeah, it's pushed far too early. There shouldn't be that pressure on women. As we all know, you want a complete reduction in adrenaline to allow women to go into labour and to go into labour safely. They can't do that if they're being pushed.
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline, what are your thoughts on this?
Several, actually. First of all, you used the word allowed earlier, and it seems that we're still trying to reassure women there's no such thing as allowed. The only allowing comes from them. You choose which parts of the NHS service you want to opt into. Not one part of it is compulsory. You cannot be made to do any of the things that they offer you or to have. However, the psychological pressure at times, and it hasn't changed in my 30 odd years of doulaing, in fact, in some ways, it's even worse. I notice as well that we're not using the word estimated due date anymore. I've noticed that huge E, which I point out to everybody, should be there, because you don't know where in your cycle or maybe you do know where in your cycle you'll ovulate. Those boys can hang around for 7 days before that egg goes, oh, come on, it's time to meet up and get together. And so even looking at that, so women who are much more informed, maybe it's their second or third birth, may be more aware of that. But you spend so much of your time building up people's confidence, helping them to become assertive and to know that it's okay to be assertive. And the induction rates now, oh, for goodness sake, it's just, some hospitals now have 50% cesarean rates. Since when did the human body overnight not be able to birth a baby? We don't change. I mean, how long ago did we lose our tails? If it's true that the coccyx was part of our tail, we've had 2 gene changes in 10,000 years, and that's to deal with processing alcohol and dairy. So our physiological changes are not there. But as Jeanette has said, women need to be able to access their oxytocin and to feel safe wherever they're going to birth. Because if hospital feels great to you, you can have a stompingly wonderful birth. If you want to be in the middle of a field, you can still birth safely. and have a wonderful birth. But the pressure and the fear, and I'm sure this is what we're all coming across now, is that there is more and more fear. And it starts with well, when you've had your scan, and then you have the next scan, and then we'll test you for this, and then we'll test you for that. And each time, prior to choosing to have each of those tests, because they are tests, women aren't told the pros and the cons, they're just told this is what we do. And so you're constantly putting them into this cycle of the expert knows best. And it takes away the expertise, potentially, from the vast majority of women. So there's so many areas in which we are, oh gosh, I hate to say this, because there are some great midwives. They need to be told by women, so it's documented, this is our choice. It goes against your policy, but this is what we're doing.
Just going back to due dates, I don't quite understand why they're starting it from the first day of the last period, because as you said, the cycles can change. You know, not everyone's got a 28-day cycle, so the fact that it's taken from the first day of your last period is crazy, because you don't know when the sperm and the egg met. So quite often that's why people go over, because they may have ovulated later in the cycle. So, you know, it doesn't really make any sense. It should really be taken from the last day of the period, because then obviously you're going to conceive after your period. So
I think every woman should expect to be pregnant for 42 weeks.
Yeah,
They expect that.
absolutely.
And I think we'd have a lot less fear. And the thing is, they're put on a timer, aren't they? Oh, you've gone overdue. What the hell does overdue mean? Babies come when babies are ready. And there's this bloody myth about placentas, like the only organ in the body that stops working.
They don't. The beautiful thing with the placentas is, guess what? They're intelligent organs. They're made between mother and baby, and the father has an input as well. The sperm has a big input into how, for a start. Oh God, yeah, those boys, you know, they get us into trouble. But no, the great thing is the placenta continues to grow to meet the baby's growing need. Why would the body produce an organ that can't do its job?
And just suddenly stops working at a certain point. Right, I'm not going to work anymore. That's it. I'm done.
It's a myth to say that the placenta doesn't work functionally, like correctly, after 41 weeks or 40 weeks, whatever they're saying now. Well, can we consider for just a moment that the placenta functions exactly how the placenta is meant to function according to the gestation of the baby?
Yep, absolutely true. And I've had women who have gone to I've had one woman who had a 45-week pregnancy. I've had several 44-weekers. By the time you reach 43, you're keeping them, this sounds terrible, you're keeping them away from the system, because you don't want the drama. It's too late to persuade anybody else otherwise. Keep them away from the drama. So once a woman reaches 42 weeks, you're then having to really work with her to keep away, so that she can then do what her baby needs her to do.
Yeah,
I think it's
involved.
I think it's important to recognise as well, we've talked a lot about 40 weeks. There is so many women that are encouraged to have induction before 40 weeks. So we all know that we've had women that go, like Caroline, you just said 45 weeks gestation.
Just one.
So imagine delivering that baby at 37 weeks. Like, how many, you know, that's a ridiculous, like, a premature baby, do you know, all the complications that go with that. And there's so many women that are told, oh, we'll allow you to go into spontaneous labour if you go into labour before 38 weeks. Otherwise, you're going to have an induction. And there's so much fear put into women constantly in the antenatal period. And there's so many that are encouraged to have an induction for a variety of reasons before even 40 weeks now. There's a lot more intervention, maternal age being a factor. Like, for me, the risk factor of maternal age is to do with the reduction in your fertility. So if you're pregnant, that risk is gone. You're already pregnant. So the risk of you becoming less fertile as you get older. Why are we then inducing women that are over 40 at 38 weeks and making them have premature babies? You know, it doesn't make sense. And the quality of evidence to back it up is really lacking. And really,
I've looked at some of the evidence as well, and because I was really interested in that, because I myself are over 40, and thought, well, what is actually the risk factors? And all of the studies I looked at have sort of collated everything, regardless of whether the women have got comorbidities or not. So they're putting everyone in the same pot and saying, well, yes, there is an increased risk of stillbirth, there is increased risk of problems, but they haven't taken into the fact that that person might have had, have some sort of condition that might mean more problems.
They don't separate it. They don't. Like a 21-year-old who lives on McDonald's and Pizza Express and drinks loads and takes drugs, they've got a higher risk of a 42-year-old yoga instructor with impeccable nutrition. So it doesn't help. Like with big babies, they don't separate the studies. When they start freaking you out saying, we've got to induce you because you're going to have a shoulder dystocia, do they separate the studies of big babies and gestational diabetes babies? No, they bloody don't. So how can they go about the place telling you that they've got evidence to say you need to be induced because a big baby's dangerous? No.
I think a lot of this work is about, it's meant to be individualized, and of course so much of it isn't. It's like it's trying to fit into a system, and women need individualized care. So I'm very fortunate in that I trained as a midwife almost 30 years ago, and when I trained, it was like normal births were like, I don't know, 85%. So I think I got 80 deliveries. Yeah, well, I hate the word deliveries, but 80 births in my training as a midwife. And student midwives now, they barely scrape getting 40 births because it's so medicalized now.
I was going to say, so what's happened? Why is this suddenly? I think it's just the increase of medicalization.
It's the increase of medicalization, Louise, for sure. And I'll just go back to a point that somebody said about inducing when the waters go, for example. Now, when I trained as a midwife, women would lose their waters, and we'd send them home with thermometers, and they came back when they were in labour. Now, sometimes that was 2 days, that was 3 days, that was 5 days, that was mostly they would have, and also women who were early, they would also be just given a thermometer and home. Sometimes they were admitted for antibiotics, and then they would go home. And then they would come back weeks and weeks later and have their baby. So it's definitely the medicalization of birth. I think since COVID, we are definitely seeing the increase in inductions. We must remember that everybody in the birthing room is fearful. Doctors are fearful. Midwives, not all midwives, but many midwives are also fearful. Women are fearful, and their partners are fearful. So when we've got fear in that birthing space, there's not much oxytocin flowing for anyone, for the midwives, for the doctors, or for the women. And the amount of pressure that people are under in this working environment, that particularly now that they're in, is a real challenge for everybody. And this is such an important conversation to be having here, because women are becoming more and more disempowered. Now, I stopped working as a midwife in the NHS many years ago because as I could see it was becoming more and more medicalised. My conscience, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't lie in my bed at night. I couldn't force women to do these things. It felt really wrong, and I just thought I can't. So I've actually focused more on breastfeeding, and the postnatal support has been my main focus. And the impact of this medicalisation of birth on breastfeeding is just simply shocking. So when women aren't having straightforward births with no medication, it's impacting their hormones. So often if women have had Syntocin on, I mean, this is a theory, but I see it so often, there must be something in it. No one's ever done the research. But if you pump women full of Syntocin on during labour, I'm pretty sure it knocks off their own natural oxytocin. And so, of course, when they're breastfeeding, there's a delay in the milk coming in, or it affects their milk supply. Then the women end up feeling really depressed because they can't feed their babies. So there's a knock-on effect of not having straightforward births without medical. I'm talking about non-medicalized birth. Now, I'm not saying everybody would have a non-medicalized birth. The World Health Organization would say it would be about 10% of women will have to have a cesarean. But, like you said, in some hospitals, we've got 50% cesarean section rate, and women have not stopped knowing how to give birth. It's the system and the environment in which they're giving birth is what is the problem.
Why do you guys think that the NHS are pushing so much more for do you think it's sheer numbers? It's just like herding the cattle through in a basic way, just get them through.
No,
or is there some other reason they're inducing? Caroline, what do you think?
Sorry, apparently our birth rate's gone down by 15 to 20%. I wonder why. It's control. It's a combination of when Embrace report came out, and Black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than a white woman, regardless of her socioeconomic status, and that really is awful. In this, I knew for years it was happening in America because Ina May Gaskin highlighted it decades ago, and it's still happening in this country. It's come down to 4.5, but that's still too high, and we don't know why. And I suspect certain questions aren't being asked. It's not just racism. So there's a huge, but it is a big part. So there's a huge fear there. And once the medics take control of a birth, they are totally responsible, however that birth goes, but they've got control and they are leading each stage of the labour through to the birth, and under a medicalised system. Because whilst we know that a woman who's in a beautiful state of bliss and oxytocin, wherever she is to birth her baby, we expect a safe, healthy outcome. That's our expectation because she's not been interfered with. But it doesn't make money. It doesn't make money for the hospitals. It doesn't make money for the pharmaceutical industry. How do you test that in a laboratory condition to actually see and how our hormones flow? And I think we're back to a huge amount of sexism as well. It's women's stuff. And unfortunately, there are too many women who are prepared to go with the men to be seen to be right. I'm going to get blasted from here to smithereens for saying that now. I honestly feel that if we don't, as women, reclaim our natural powers, our natural abilities, because some women do need medical intervention, and thank goodness it's there for when it's needed. But I think it's a lot more political and social political than we talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Angela, did you have a point on that, my love?
I do think as well, something that I noticed in my experience is not just a control aspect. We're losing the skills to facilitate natural birth. Students are coming to the end of their training, so third-year students, and in my experience, I'd speak to the third-year students. How many water births have you facilitated? How many women have you attended that have delivered standing up? How many placentas have you delivered without drugs? And these are like the next generation of midwives, and they're telling me, I haven't done that, I haven't seen that, I haven't had that exposure throughout my training. So that next generation of midwives has completely lost that skill set of natural birth without intervention, and some of them sadly get to the end of their training and qualify as midwives without even seeing a natural physiological birth.
And those are going to be
just
the
like
obstetricians,
obstetricians,
the next lot.
just like obstetricians who are only there to sort of get involved when there is a complication or a problem. Most of them, if you ask them, have never seen a natural physiological birth with no drugs, with a woman's being properly supported in a nice environment that's not brightly lit and she's not laying her back on a bed. They've never ever seen it or experienced it. So how are they going to pass that on for generations to come? And that was the bit that really frightened me as a midwife, looking at these next generation. And it's not through fault of their own, it's the way the system is. They're not getting the exposure of natural birth. A lot of the home birth services in many areas have been suspended or cancelled, so the students aren't even getting experience of home births. A lot of the birth centres are being shut down, so they're not getting to see water births, not continuously monitoring in labour. All of these things that facilitate natural physiological birth, we're losing those skills. And that's why it's really important that doulas and people like us guys here that are really passionate about natural birth are keeping those skills alive and passing them on and training the next generation, because within the service of NHS as it is, those wise skills from centuries and generations of being passed down, we're losing them, and that's what's frightening. And it's our responsibility to keep those skills and sort of pass them on.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, I completely agree, and I agree with you that it is frightening how many you guys have got to keep the traditions going, and I think there are fundamentally traditions, aren't they, that have been utilized for decades, centuries before us. In terms of now options for women, Nickita, throwing it open to you first. How do we let women know effectively that they have got a choice and there is a choice to make? And I was very lucky. I had a midwife who supported a home birth, which back then was quite unusual. The others tried to convince me I was better off in hospital, but I was very lucky I had her. However, I don't know that there's that many women midwives out there that necessarily sort of push for women to take their choices. What would you say needs to happen now to let women know what is available?
Well, come to us. We're the alternative. And my agenda is not to criticize the current system, because quite frankly, the system works very well for the system, just not for the women birthing inside it. So instead of criticizing, create. So I thought, well, I'll just make a new system over here. Look, people have got a choice. If they think that they've got a really good maternity system that's free to use, there is one. Go use it. I'll see you for your second birth.
Yeah,
but I think part of it is that people don't realize what they don't know, and it's only when they have those difficult experiences they're like, I don't want to do it like that again. So I think it's about somehow empower, because we've all been conditioned, and it's about losing that conditioning and working towards losing some of that conditioning. I don't quite know, but it is about empowering women even before they get pregnant. Like, they need to know this stuff before. It's almost like when they're pregnant, it's too late.
Yeah, they get bombarded and they can't cope with the information, and they kind of cower in the corner. They're like, fine, I'll do whatever you want. But the problem is, like Alison said, you can only be as informed as the information you've got. And if they don't know places like When Push Comes to Shove exist, how do they know they've got options? And I think the main point is, like, when they do find out about us, some of them will go, wow, that's amazing, we want that sort of service, and we can provide that service. But a lot of them will think it's a luxury.
Yeah, and also, what if I can get it free if I can get free care on the NHS, why would I not take free care on the NHS? But what people don't realise is when they're paying for service, they're actually paying for continuity of care and carer, which they're not going to get generally. I mean, obviously, occasionally it happens. I mean, less so now with everything that's happening. But it is that, I've also worked as an independent midwife, and it's that continuity of care. I looked after a lot of high-risk women, but they were women who really knew what they wanted and what they didn't want. And for the most part, they all had normal, straightforward births at home, even though they had high risk. But we fought for those women. We stood up. We went to the hospital appointments with them. We stood up to the consultants. We advocated for them. And at the end of the day, the woman has to not feel the fear almost. She has to kind of continue with her decision and be really sure that I really, really do not want what you're offering. But that's a really hard place for women to get to when they say, oh, you obviously haven't heard the information I've given you, so we'll just get someone else to come in, and then they kind of say it a different way, and then someone else comes in, they shout a bit louder. I think by raising your voice she's gonna hear it in a different way, and it's like, no, she's made a decision that she doesn't want, so it's, but again, it's just all of that fear. And also they exactly like Angela was saying about them losing their skills. Birth actually is not that difficult, and when you know birth really well, you start to notice when something's not going right. You often have many hours before you might notice something. It's rare that you have the, I don't know, like a cord prolapse or something, or that woman starts heavily bleeding, that happens without much notice. Because mostly labour takes a bit of a pattern. And if the woman is in a good environment where she feels safe, guess what? Hormones flow just in the way they're meant to. But when you start adding things in, or people popping into the room or looking for keys or whatever it is, which is the usual thing, you don't have sex with all that going on. Why would you birth a baby when you've got so many disturbances? So it's not difficult. This stuff is really, really not difficult. But it's because of all the fear, it makes it really challenging. And of course, who is benefiting from all of this? Not the women, not really the doctors, big pharma.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember as well, people's perceptions of birth. Like, we all work in the birth world, so we've all been very privileged to witness beautiful physiological births. The birth generally in the mainstream, like what you see on the television, and it's quite a taboo topic. So a lot of women have no exposure to what a real birth is like, even when they become pregnant, or their education has only shown them women having an epidural with their legs in stirrups and loads of doctors running in to save the day in a big brightly lit room, and they're screaming and they're being coached to push this baby out, and that is what they believe birth is all about and what's going to happen. And it's so important that women are educated to see the magic and how amazing birth can be, and exposing them to pain-free birth, women giving birth with smiles on their faces and not needing intervention because they felt well supported, but they don't have that exposure, and that's why education is so important. like we mentioned earlier, and even before pregnancy, we should be teaching this to our kids. Do you know, this is fundamental part. And like, if everybody knows somebody that has experienced a traumatic birth, either they've been through it themselves or they definitely know somebody, and that isn't normal, but we take it for granted. Oh, you know, it's so and so, they had a cesarean and they had to have an epidural and all that, and it's just taken as normal. And we rarely talk about these amazing goddesses of women that have home births with no pain relief and no intervention, and because they've been properly supported throughout their pregnancy journey.
Most people think that's rare. People think, oh, home birth, and you had, oh, you were lucky. They use that word, oh, you were lucky. No, that's normal. The stuff you hear about is just common. It's not, doesn't mean it's normal.
Yeah.
The trauma.
And can I just add that women have been birthing at home and in their own environments for as long as man has existed. So it's only in the last 60, 70 years that it's been normal for women to give birth in hospital. So why are we still believing that it's the safest place to give birth in when women are being harmed in that environment every single day?
But we had the whole thing that my daughter's first baby, she chose to go into hospital because she's got a small house, people come and go at will, and she wanted privacy. And afterwards, the consultant, we had a fabulous midwife, fabulous hands-off birth in the birthing centre, with far more people than the hospital like to have in a birthing room. And the consultant walked by later and recognised me. She said, "Oh, I recognised your name. Congratulations. What are you doing here?" And so the consultant was expecting me, because she knows what I'm like, my daughter would choose. The second time around, she was thinking about a home birth, and then they sent an automatic appointment to the sorry, you're not supposed to say that, are you? To weight management clinic. Yeah, this is a lovely thing. There is some good news amongst the young people. I've got another daughter who's pregnant, and they share the TikToks, and they share the women who are standing up for normal birth, who are natural physiological birth, who are trend leaders, or oh god, I'm so old, what's it called? So
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So it's so there is some good stuff going on, but those lovely women who are standing up and saying, hey, I had a physiological birth, a normal birth at home, the trolls get there and bots them, which is sad. So there is stuff going on underground, and all of us as birth keepers, you're right, my kids have grown up with it. They support their friends within the community. They know that they can come back to me. So I've been blessed to support quite a few of my friends' births. And, you know, you don't charge for it because, as my daughter said, Mama, I couldn't afford your fees. But then we say, you know, if somebody's on the doorstep, it's very different. I've been called out at 3 o'clock in the morning by the neighbours' children. But it's because, as we were saying, we need to be educating our children and our younger people, so that they know that birth is normal and we can do it.
But the issue that you get with the trolls, for example, when people come at you and say, yeah, but women used to die all the time in childbirth before we had like penicillin and stuff like that. But what people don't look at is the women that used to die all the time in childbirth, it still bloody happens, because for the same 3 reasons: poverty. So if you are malnourished and you live in an overcrowded environment where disease can spread like wildfire, you're going to have the same problems as a woman in 1890, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got a genuine physical ailment. I don't know, you've been kicked by a donkey and smashed your pelvis. Yeah, you're going to have some issues there in a mechanical sense. And the third, and the most common reason in my experience, and I'm sure I can speak for everyone else here, but if not, the most common reason that birth goes wrong is because of over medicalized intervention.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
I think the thing with the NHS is it's incredibly risk averse, and all the staff within it have to work with risk aversion. You are constantly going, right, this might go wrong. We need to make sure that the woman and a partner are aware that this might go wrong, because if we don't tell them, I'm going to get in trouble, and they might come around and sue us if something goes wrong and nobody told them. So there is that mindset with a lot of medical professionals, that it's almost like they have to pile on everything that might go wrong to make sure the woman's aware. So in their head, they're getting them to make an informed choice that way, because why would you put your baby in danger by having a home birth when you've got X, Y, and Z risks? So our role
But
as
if they're trying to avoid
doulas-
litigation, surely they should be supporting more women having birth at home, giving birth at home,
Yeah,
because then
you'd
they're
have
not at
thought so.
risk.
But then
But
even
the
many
yeah.
studies show that the less likelihood for intervention and pain relief, and the
Yeah.
studies are showing that giving birth at home is safe. There's so many studies out there. We just got to get
Yeah.
the word out there
Yeah,
enough.
absolutely. But
those
you cannot control the situation in the same way. As a medical professional, you cannot control a home birth in the same way as you can control a hospital birth. It's easier to coerce people in hospital than it is at home. Women are far more likely to assert themselves when they're in their own environment. Not always, but far more likely. And I think that as doulas, our role is to be the advocate for women. When we are there, we can help them stand up against coercion. We can say to them, look, this is what the research says. This is what, have you asked them this? If they say that to you, throw this back at them. If they say it's a 200% increase, if you do that, well, 200% of what? Is that going from 0.1% to 0.3%? Which actually, in the grand scheme of things, is nothing, is it? Let's face it. But that's still a 200% increase. So it is, our roles as a doula are really making sure that we can support women and but give them the tools to make decisions that are right for them. And that's why often the births go so much better when they're doula supported.
Sadly, I think a lot of the interventions that happen within a hospital environment as well, through the fear of litigation, is to do, well, if these things went to court, say there was a negative outcome and they went to court, and they've got all these facilities in hospital to do all of these things. If they do all of the things, when it stands up in a courtroom, which is, you know, again, run by people that don't understand natural physiological birth, they can say, well, the hospital used all the resources they had. They used all
we did this, we did this, we did this, we did that. It's not our fault.
All of these
things. Our fault.
So they tried their best. They tried everything, and even though the outcome was poor, they then can't be held responsible.
And then they can't pay up because it's not their fault.
I don't realise it's probably what caused it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. It's never looked at that if we did just let the natural physiological process happen, maybe we wouldn't need all these interventions, and you wouldn't have had the outcome that you wanted. But because people are working from a fear of litigation, and the court system is not run by people that understand physiological birth, basically the more interventions you do, the more you've tried to help, the less culpable or responsible you are. And sadly, that's the way that things are nowadays. And
unfortunately, in order for parents to be supported, if they've got a badly disabled child, they have to go through the litigation process to be able to be supported to look after their child. You cannot get money any other way to support your child. You have to sue somebody. Somebody has to be at fault. And so, of course, there's going to be this defensive thing.
The blame culture. But sadly, the truth is, if you're watching this and you want a physiological birth, you need to go to someone who's an expert in physiological birth. Because if you go to an obstetrician for a natural birth, you might as well go to a prostitute for a cuddle. It does not mean you're going to have. It's not for the birth you want. You want to go to a nail technician to get your motor fixed. So don't go to an obstetrician. It's for physiological birth.
Love your expressions, Nickita. No, brilliant. I mean, as a member of the public who's not trained in this, who has no knowledge of this, but I'm a first-time mum, and I'm thinking, okay, but what about the fact that a load of things could go wrong? You know, how do you speak to will-be mums who do have a fear that, you know, they've spoken to their midwife, and their midwife's kind of given them the impression that, well, what if something goes wrong at home? Would you not feel safer in a hospital? What would you say to that mum?
I always talk in terms of what are your fears? Where's it coming from? I encourage them very muchly to go back and say, where's your evidence? What's it based upon? Find out the midwife's experience. Is she experienced? If she's worked in the bush, and I really do mean if she's worked with her hands and her senses alone, I think you've got a much better experience of midwife and quality of midwife than one who's only ever worked where there's the emergency pull cord and the button and the machine that goes bing.
Yeah, but that's about as common as rocking horse shit. You don't find them anywhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know a few. I do know a few. I do know a few. And because again, and I'll say to her, I was told my pelvis was too small for a 7-pound baby, so I had the first home birth and a water birth in North London after a cesarean section, and I did Susan for that. And those midwives had the calmness and presence of mind. They were only there for an hour anyway, whilst I pushed my baby out. But their computer back then couldn't accept that I'd been pushing for 4.5 hours. Computer said no. So I talked to them about where these fears coming from, and then we talked to them about, do we wait for somebody to tell us when our period can start? Do we, sometimes around our own bodily functions, and depending on, I judge on how much I can talk about, what about sex and where do you make love? Sometimes it's not appropriate on a first meeting, and other times that it, so again, it's that individualized care. So it's getting them to understand with gentle questioning, maybe referring them some childbirth books where you get a bit more of an understanding of the natural. And I notice that we don't say natural birth, we say physiological. Why have we had to change? And I'll bring that up as well. A natural birth ain't one where you're induced, cannula in hand, drip, etc.
No,
So it's
vaginal birth. It's very different.
It is.
And I think the other thing as well is if someone is supported, particularly by a birth keeper or a doula, or someone who knows physiological birth or natural birth, then that person is able to recognise things if there was to be a different course of action. So if there was a concern, then that's what hospitals are for. Hospitals are there for people that need assistance, need help. So, I mean, unless you live 3 hours away from a hospital, and if you live 10 minutes from a hospital, then you can get to one pretty quickly. So, that's how I would speak to someone in terms of the fact that if they are concerned there's something going wrong, then they would have that reassurance of someone that can recognise that early and get them to hospital should they need it.
Also, there's no difference. So let's say you're planning a normal systemic birth. The system tell you, stay at home as long as possible, check. Come in when your contractions are 3 minutes apart, or whatever they're saying, 4 and 10 now, I can't remember what it is. So you leave your home and you go into hospital. What's the bloody difference of leaving your home and going into hospital for a transfer from a home birth, or just going into hospital anyway? It's the same action. So it doesn't make a great deal of sense with the fear there. And like, if you're trying to address someone's fear, the woman needs to know there is only 3 ingredients for a good birth. You need to feel safe and loved and wise. And through your pregnancy, if you've got one-to-one support, if you've got a competent birth keeper, they will recognize your individual differences, how you process information. They will notice any trauma you've got, and they're there to help you work through that as well. Certainly when push comes to shove, birth keepers, because we teach it on our courses. It's not just about birth. You have to be there with an open heart and an open mind. You've got to leave your preconceptions in the rearview mirror and your judgment in the rearview mirror, and just bloody be present. Like I say to every woman who gives birth, you need to be the epitome of a human being, not a human doing, not a human becoming. You just are. Same goes for a birth keeper. You can only help someone as much as they want to be helped. But in order to do that, you sit in front of them, like in Buddhism, it says, be that of an empty rice bowl. You are just present and you listen. Active listening. Just listen to what that woman is saying to you. Pick up on any fears and use the Socratic method. Ask them questions so they can answer them themselves. And our job, much, contrary to popular belief, we're not here to do the exact opposite of the system. If a woman realizes she is not on bloody trial, it's not up to her to prove she can give birth naturally. It's up to the system to prove she can't. Then she's able to make more informed decisions. So let's say, for example, they come at her, oh God, your baby's enormous. You'll never give birth to this. You've got to be induced. Cool. So what you do, you don't sit there and give her the contrary information, because let's face it, people listen to white coats, all right? And you get to gauge what sort of, system that your client is going through in her head and all the processes she's making. So you're not there to go, no, you're fine, give birth at home. Say, all right, before you accept or decline, you might want to write your consultant midwife a few questions. So let's say it's a big baby. Please define to me what a big baby is. Are your studies together with gestational diabetes babies, if you're worried about shoulder dystocia, so the baby's shoulder getting stuck, what percentage of your induced babies end up in the NICU? What percentage of babies who experience a shoulder dystocia are induced? And can it happen to a little baby? If they come back with the correct answers, that woman has then got more information. Like, you've had to say nothing and it's all on them. You either give them rope to hang or they actually give you genuine good answers. And then the woman can go, okay, I have yet more information to make an informed decision. Because most women are under the assumption, I think it's more of a subconscious thing, but almost what they're telling them is law, not guidelines. And furthermore, guidelines that are based on naffle evidence for the most part. Maternity guidelines are only 8% category A evidence based.
Yeah.
You've got categories A to E, A being amazing evidence, E being shit evidence. 8% category A. And then furthermore, look at the evidence still. We cannot understand natural birth by watching how women give birth in hospital. You wouldn't understand the behavior of birds by having a look at them in the zoo, would you? So how can you understand physiological natural birth by seeing how it takes place in an environment with bright lights and strangers putting their hands inside you? I mean, Christ, could you relax? If someone said, I'm just going to put my hand inside you, hope you don't mind. No, we're not there for that. We're there to go, do you know what? I'm fine. My cervix isn't a crystal ball, so you're not going to be able to find much out apart from where I am in this point in time. Do women know they can say no to a vaginal exam? And then when they turn up at the hospital, you can't come in until we've given you a vaginal exam. It's like the world's worst bouncer. You can say, no, you're right, piss off, I'll go home. Or I'm coming in because that's what I want. But don't be scared. And just remember that the women, the fearful women that are working in this system who appear to come across as really confrontational and nasty, there's a scared child in every single one of those people. And you don't put out a fire using another fire. You approach it with a loving stance, and you just understand that it's not what they're banging on about. It's not your problem. Mind your own business. If you want to have a natural birth and you want to have a birthing environment of your choice, that is your deal. Their issues, or we can't come, or you can't do, that's not your problem. But having the gumption and to stand up for that in that point in time is bloody hard. Look, I had a baby in 2020 and I'm a very experienced birth attendant, and they gave me a run for my money. They kept turning up at my door reading really boring guidelines, and I had to go, oh, no, and close the door. Terribly dull. But I can see how difficult it is for women who aren't informed to go no, because they feel coerced. And the language they use, your baby will die. They say that, your baby will die.
They're worn down. They're constantly worn down. They're constantly told their baby will die. They'll bleed to death. They'll, whatever it is, whatever they've hooked them on. And of course, when you're pregnant, you are emotional. You want to protect your baby. And if someone's telling you you're going to kill your baby by this action, what are you going to do? You're going to take the safe route, or what you perceive as the safe route.
Yeah, because
I think all these points are highlighting the importance of continuity of care, because all these, going back to what you said earlier, Catherine, about what would you say to a woman that's fearful or scared of having a home birth? I think, me personally, I say to my clients, you are more likely to have a concern addressed or picked up on by somebody that knows you. So somebody that has followed you through your antenatal journey. They know what your fears are. They know about your family dynamics. They know how you feel about things. They're much more likely to pick up on something that might be concerning throughout your labour than somebody that's met you on the day that you walk through the doors of delivery suite in established labour. Anyone that's had a child knows that when you're in established labour, you're not your usual self, that you're not that person. So somebody just meeting you while you're in that vulnerable state doesn't know the real you. So by getting to know your clients antenatally, you can really advocate for them. So when it does get to the point that if they are involved in the medicalised system and they're getting this fear injected into them constantly, they've got somebody there as an advocate for them, whether it be a doula or a birth keeper, but somebody consistent that knows them, that can support them to help them make informed choices. So like what Jeanette was saying, things like picking up, giving them the correct information, not saying when they're told, oh, you're going to double the chances of stillbirth if you go over 42 weeks. Well, double of what? Like, you know, is it, what are the figures? And presenting them with correct information so that they can make proper decisions, and guiding them through that fearful and coercive language and making them feel supported wherever they decide to give birth. It's just the importance of having that continuous support figure throughout the journey. And sadly, you're not going to get that within the NHS, although they've been trying to roll out the continuity model since 2016.
Oh, wonderful. They were doing it when I was trained as a midwife. We were talking about continuity of care in the 90s. It just doesn't, it never gets sorted because it's expensive. You get burnout with midwives. Continuity of care is brilliant, but midwives there are not enough midwives to be able to give proper continuity of care. We're not willing as a country to spend the money.
They haven't got enough to do what they need to do or retain the staff as it is.
No, because we're not willing as a country to spend the money.
A model is going to work that requires further staffing, because they're already struggling massively with staffing levels anyway. So that's where the alternative comes for women and families is, yes, there's the free system and this is what they can offer you. But if you want the best care, you need to be looking at employing somebody to give you that continuity, whether it be an independent midwife, a birth keeper, a doula, even somebody, a family member that's going to advocate for you on your behalf and has got some knowledge and is willing to support you. It doesn't have to be financially a massive expense, although I personally believe it's the best investment you could ever make, is investing in your birth experience and your birth journey. I do think that it doesn't have to cost, and organisations like When Push Comes to Shove, they have an access fund for people that are on low income, so we're not discriminating against people based on their financial status, and everybody should be entitled to have an option of having this continuity of carer. And it's so important just to get the word out there, really, that women do have these choices, because so many women just don't know that they have other options. And really highly educated women think that they are not allowed to not do what they're told by the doctors and the hospital, and it all goes back to education. And that's sort of where these discussions are so important, getting the word out there that women do have other choices.
I also want to bring in the importance of supporting the partners. So a lot of men who have had a lot of fear, and sometimes you meet men who are coming from quite a good holistic background, and or women, but they're also needing a lot of support. And this is something that, as birth keepers and doulas and independent midwives, we give freely, willingly, because we know that we're educating the man and the woman, or the woman and the woman, because they are the people who are birthing, and you don't want to be there telling them what to do and coming between them. We're there to support them both. And sometimes our work involves, and it's not for every birth keeper to do this, but sometimes you're almost having to do relationship counselling because the partner is so traumatized from the first birth or a previous birth experience. I know men who've had vasectomies. I know men, and I know couples who've separated because the system has just desystematized them so badly. It's horrific. And so this is part of, God, it's that word again, that holistic care that we bring. We're there to, how do you work together well? What's going to work for you? What am I doing to support both of you? And that again increases the safety. And even if we're working within the system, we can still be working with both of them. So however the birth goes,
you become their friends. It's not like you've got a 10-minute appointment and you get shouted all of that. You come onto their turf, you sit with them on their sofa and say, what do you want? And when someone who's had a previous trauma, you see their shoulders relax and go, oh, I've been asked what I want. And Alison, I wanted to bring the focus onto what you do, because what you do is so important, and people don't realize Alison has released a book called Baby Talk to Me. She's a very intuitive midwife. What do you think, if these babies had a voice and could tell all the parents what would they say to them right now? What would be your message?
So the babies, there's a whole book written about the messages from babies, but they're not very impressed about the way birth is going either, really. And it's about women getting back into their power. As women, we have given away our power for a long time, often unknowingly. And of course, there they are in this energy of creation, but also with all this fear. Creation is meant to be in joy, and actually there's so much fear around all of this birthing. So they are asking for something different, which is about returning to the old ancient ways. Yeah. And it is about women. So that's what part of our role, I think, is to empower women, exactly like you're doing when push comes to shove, that they've got choices, that can make a decision. I actually feel like the reason that we're in the state we're in is that we've already divided the body and mind, but we've actually divided body, mind and spirit. And let's face it, birth is a spiritual act. And I think it's about bringing some of that spirituality back to birth, because we've lost so much of it. We're made up of all three. Birth is a spiritual experience, is a sexual experience, but to mention those out loud is not very accepting in our society, but that's what it is. So it is about getting women to come back. They have to do an inner journey. Pregnancy is an inner journey as well, in order for them to feel more confident, because our inner good girl comes out in labor. Okay, so the doctor said, so then I'll just do what the doctor said. And actually we've got to find our inner warrior.
Yeah, I've got
ideally beforehand, but yeah, so yeah. Yeah, it's just become too medicalized, and we're also trying to have conversations with women when they're in labor. Like, this is not the time to talk about the risk of your baby dying in labor, or the risk of having a procedure in labor.
When you're pushing your baby out, we're just going to perform an episiotomy if we need to. Is that all right with you? And the woman's pushing the baby out.
Sure.
And can I say, I am really shocked at the amount. So in the 80s, everybody got an episiotomy and a perineal shave. I wasn't a midwife.
And an enema.
Yeah. I wasn't around then. And then, so I was in the point where they had stopped doing routine episiotomies. Yeah, and I can't believe 90s. The amount of women that I am seeing now postnatally with breastfeeding, who, pretty much every second woman has had an episiotomy. And you're just
what now?
Oh yeah, I didn't used to see episiotomies, but I'm seeing a huge pattern that women are having episiotomies. And I know what's happening, because they don't know birth, physiological birth well. We know what happens is the heart rate drops as the baby's getting ready almost to come out, and then they're all panicking, doing episiotomies, and then more like forceps.
As a midwife, I saw this so many times where on the PPG, the heart rate would dip a little bit, but the head's sitting there.
Yeah,
and quite often they say, "Come on, get me a piece of scissors," and I'd say, "Well, why?" Yeah, the baby's coming, and then sure enough, next contraction, the head's out. Why are you suddenly rushing in to cut her for absolutely no reason at all?
It's often women who've got a really incredibly stretchy perineum as well, which is getting out of the way. That you don't. Why would you
argued with me that the perineum was extremely white, and I could see that it was going to go. It didn't go. It stretched. Yeah.
And the evidence shows that it's actually better to tear than it is to have an episiotomy with the healing.
Yeah.
If you were a midwife in the 50s and you had to perform an episiotomy, you would be shamed. Like, you don't ever perform an episiotomy as a midwife. In the 50s, you were a crap midwife if you had to do that. You would be like, no, that should never happen. Let me ask every single one of you the following question. I'll be interested to know your answer. How many of you have seen a woman's intuition wrong?
Never.
No, neither have I.
I say, as a non-trained person, I was delivering my son at home in a birthing pool, and after my horrific first birth, I was empowered. No, this is going my way. I'm in control of this. This is what I had to do with the old PTSD and all the rest of it. But I got to a space where I decided I was doing it my way, and I was delivering, and I was in the middle of pushing. And there was a younger midwife there, and she said, right, I'm just going to check the baby's heartbeat. Can you stand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm delivering a baby. I'm on my knees in the birthing pool. You want me to get out so you can check? And I just turned to her, like mid-contraction. I was like, the baby's fine. And she said, well, we don't know that. We need to check. And I went, I know my baby is fine. You're not doing it. Now, I'm quite a forthright person, and I had mentally geared myself up to, I'm in charge of this birth, not anyone else. I'm in charge of this. But a lot of women wouldn't necessarily feel that way. And I had been told by an incredible woman, trust your intuition. And I was right. And I was right first time to be worried about what they were doing. And by the third baby, I was like, no, this is all me. You get no say. But you know, it was my intuition telling me my baby was fine. My first baby, I knew something was wrong and I alerted them and there was a problem. But I think you're right. I think most women, you listen to your heart and soul and your gut, and it's going to tell you exactly how your baby's doing.
Because often when you don't listen, something happens when you don't listen. It's in ordinary life, not just in birth. You know, like, oh damn, why did I not think? You know, I didn't listen to my intuition, did I? And that's what I think.
When you're listening to others, it's when you listen to other people that get in your head. You get in your head rather than in your intuition. That's
so you've
where
got to be in your heart and womb space. That's where you need to be, is in your heart, making the decisions from your heart and your womb, not from your head. Yeah, that's important. And that's what the thing with the babies is, that you know, if women are in community, this is part of my thing and why I wrote the book, is if they're in communication with their babies, exactly like you just said, you know, you connect in with the baby. Are you all right? It looks like hell and shit show out here, but are you okay? And then you'll ask the baby. I mean, I am able to connect with babies in labour. So I hear babies, and if I can connect with other people's babies, they can definitely connect with their own babies, and that's part of
this is why it's so important to have choice of where to give birth. Home is not right for every woman. Hospital is not right for every woman. You have to have birthing centres. You have to have medicalised hospitals. You have to have home, because it means that every woman, they know themselves. If they're, because I've had the situation where everything's been fine and the woman's gone, yeah, something's not right. You listen, and for that woman, that was right to go in and give birth in hospital, because she had an inkling something wasn't right. And we need to be able to listen to people, and we need to be able to give people choice of where they need to give birth. And going back to that whole fear thing again, for some women, home isn't right for them. They will never be at ease with themselves enough and their birth to be, especially, you know, first time mums are scared. It is frightening for them very often. So we can do what we can, but we can't take that choice away from them either. They have to be able to choose where to give birth. But we need a system that allows that choice. We need more tiny little community birthing spaces where I have 2 or 3 or 4 beds, so that women, if they don't want it, because it's too chaotic at home, they want a peaceful environment. And for them, going off to a 2-bed environment of having a doula looking after them, the beds get changed for them, they can have a water bath, whatever it is, it's there for them. But we need that within easy distance for everybody to be able to do as well. That would be a wonderful.
We want, when push comes to shove, birth centres all over the world. That's my
PHA want to help with that, Nickita, because
before I became a doula, my head, that's what I saw were happening, is having some sort of centre that was tiny and community based for women to go to, like going back to the old mother and baby units again.
I think you're so right, Jeanette, because and I think, Jeanette, you're so right, because again, it's that you choose where you feel safest and happy,
and then you feel comfortable.
And when we've got those small units, they're homely, they're womb-like, aren't they? And and she can then be supported post-birth in her recovery.
Some women don't want to be around when the other children are there. They want to be on their own, and their mum can look after their babies at home, and they can go off on their own and give birth.
Maybe they want a break. They want to enjoy baby for 24 hours without everyone else piling in, you know. I think Nickita and I are on the same sort of level with that, because we'd love to support birthing centres, small little community-based birthing centres in every community across the UK. We would love to do that, and we'd love to do that with Nickita and you guys in terms of what that looks like. How do we achieve that? And it's definitely it's on our list of things we want to look at, because we've listened to Nickita for months, and as PHA, I know many of us are very supportive of this way forward. And, you know, if natural birthing centres, small, like Jeanette says, just small little centres in each community, across every community, that would be absolutely incredible for mums that, you know, maybe don't want to give birth at home or in the middle of the woods or whatever their choice is, and which is what they should have. But it's there with maybe a medical person on standby should something needs to be
Oh,
done.
it used to be the local GP used to have obstetric GPs.
Yes.
When I trained as midwife, we had obstetric GPs, and they would go out and do a forceps at home. It was really rare. It was always completely going out when I trained as midwife, but we had obstetric GPs.
Yeah,
And you had the
absolutely.
flying squad. Nothing.
Yeah, we did.
The one thing that I am noticing now, which is kind of the opposite, the extreme, there are more and more women deciding to free birth. Great. On paper, that looks great. But this is what I would urge everyone to do. Just make a decision in your head. Where is this coming from? Am I choosing to free birth from love or fear? Because if you are choosing to free birth simply because you're afraid of the hospital, that ain't a choice. That's coercion. And when there's fear, you see problems. I can guarantee you that. When you are feeling safe and loved and wise, birth 99% of the time plays out beautifully. But when there's fear, there's problems. So many women maybe watching this will think, well, there's reason to be fearful because birth's dangerous. What they don't realize is the byproduct of the fear are the issues that we see on a daily basis. So where are you making your decisions from? Is it from a place of love or from a place of fear? Ask yourself, do I really want to free birth, or do I just not want to go to the hospital? It's very, very different. Do I feel confident in my body and trust my baby? Cool. Then free birth. Do what you want. But if you're like, oh, I'm just so scared to go in the hospital, no matter what, I won't go in. Think about that. And we need you. If you're watching this, we need more people like these fantastic women you see before you out there helping women doing this. Angela and I have a 52 module course where you can train for an entire year to learn these skills and take on this ancient wisdom, so you can go out into your community, just like Jeanette was saying, and we've got someone in every community who's the birther. Like Caroline's had her door knocked on. I've had it 3 o'clock in the morning, a neighbour giving birth on a doorstep. We want that. Knock. Can you help? Yeah, sure. We need that in all communities. So if you're thinking this is your calling, just pick up the phone and talk to us. We'll do Zooms with you to answer any questions, any fears you've got. Because let me promise you this, if this is your calling and you keep having this niggle, it won't ever go away.
No, I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that for sure. 100%. When this is all said and done,
will push you. The universe will push you until you do it, and then that feeling will go away. But you will always have that niggle. You will always be drawn to birth. And whatever your vocation is, you are here for one reason only, and it's to serve the world with love through whichever channels you may choose, be it birth, be it music, be it architecture, be it being a medic, whatever. You're here to serve the world with love. And as long as you wake up every day and just say, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And you're serving the world with love, you will be divinely compensated, and you will see the beauty in everything every day. Sometimes it's really difficult because you get people push back at you and you get attacked left, right and center. But you know what, when I wake up in the morning and I have oh god, people aren't liking what I'm doing, I just think to myself, there are women around the world who need permission to leave the house, who need permission to get a passport, or permission to whatever. If I can't speak up for those women, who the hell am I? So if you, no matter what your vocation, and you're putting your head above the parapet and you're in the awakened community of freedom fighting, and you've got any resistance, just remember, it doesn't matter. And I have to remind myself, and Angela often reminds me this, it's not your business what other people think of you. Just go and do your thing.
I was going to say it's not their business.
It's none of your business.
Do you.
You.
Yeah, you're right. It's none of our business what other people think of us. We've got a job to do, and as long as we can go to bed at night and know we're hand on our heart, we've done what we believe with integrity and morals and so and love.
And
don't worry about anybody
change
else.
People, they can only change themselves.
Exactly.
It is not our responsibility.
And there really is, if you really think about it, there's no such thing as darkness. Darkness isn't a thing, it's the absence of a thing. And that thing is light. So if you are sitting here wondering, I don't know what to do, just shine your light, because your light will shine brighter than 1,000 lit bulbs, really dim bulbs. You can be the brightness, and you just bring that into the birth room. You don't go in and go, right, let's get down to it then, because we want the oxytocin to keep flowing. But you come and you shine your light. You look into her eyes and you tell her, you're doing it, and just show all the love.
And Nickita, you're doing a wonderful job educating women. doulas, birth workers, just to ensure that this message is heard loud and clear. And I think with enough of us, we can do something about this and improve the birth world. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
What I'd love to do, as we draw to an end today, what I would love to do moving forward, I've been watching this and great personalities and energies coming out of you ladies, and I think maybe the next step is to do a public Zoom maybe, and open this up to people, maybe women in particular, who are thinking of having a baby or have recently had a baby, who maybe haven't considered looking down the more natural route before, and we can come on and introduce you guys and open it up for Q&A for a certain set period of time. So women can come and talk to you directly and understand what's available, how you guys can help, what their rights are, how they can feel empowered, and so on and so forth. Because I think this is just the beginning of this conversation. This is just the beginning of this journey. And through ladies like yourselves and then many others that are out there across the world doing incredible work in terms of natural birthing, I think that it's down to us to help educate, support, empower, and most importantly, let women know they're very loved, and you have got a massive support network out there. You're not on your own, and you know there's so many people who can help you. So I just want to thank everyone today for partaking in this and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your expertise. Whenever I speak to Nickita, I'm just thinking, let's get this war done, because I really want to focus on getting trained up myself. It's been a calling for a number of years now, since after my first, and like Nickita says, it's not going away. It's not going anywhere. So as soon as this is all said and done, I'll be joining you girls. But for anyone else,
wonderful, welcome.
Yeah,
welcome.
No, I'm coming. But for anyone else out there who maybe has been inspired by this, you know, get in touch with Nickita. Look up when push comes to shove. We'll put some contact details in the notes. But don't hold back. Get involved. You know, this is a time for a health revolution across the board, and that certainly includes birth and breastfeeding and, you know, postnatal and all of that good stuff. And there are options, and all you ladies out there need to be aware you have options and you have rights, and it's your birth. It's no one else's. It's your birth, and you can be empowered and supported to create what you need. But thank you ladies for today. Let's do something else again soon, because this really is the beginning of a marvelous journey. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.